Welcome back. Keisha Henry is here, and if you find it hard to believe in yourself and your abilities, no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you repeat your affirmations, and you still seek external validations, if you're not fulfilled in life, then the book Healing from the Heart Lessons from My Journey by Keisha Henry is exactly what you need. We're going to have a conversation here with Miss Keisha, who is an MSW and she's an LCSW. She is a trauma trained therapist working with women, adolescents, and parents for the past years. And she is all about recognizing that the whole person matters and it can help you to bring relevance to other aspects of life. And we're going to find out today about integrity, building trust, understanding, empowerment, and so much more. Getting more done in life, surviving, thriving, being happier, being healthier, everything that goes along with that. So, Miss Keisha, glad to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much. Just to listen to that bio, I'm like, who is he talking about? That was
They
amazing.
call that
Thank you for
imposter
doing that.
syndrome.
Thank you. You know what I
You're
mean?
very
Like, who's
welcome.
that
And so
person? And I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for such a warm introduction. Thank you.
you're welcome. And there is a little bit of, there's always like that Dunning-Kruger thing that always rears its ugly head, right? Where there's like all these people out there and they're so confident and they don't know that much. There's the rest of us who really like push ourselves and we're a little outside of our comfort zone and we doubt ourselves and we're just like, we've accomplished so much. So sometimes it helps to get the little pat on the back from someone else to say how great you are and what you've accomplished. But in your own words, what are you currently excited about? What has you jazzed up? Where's your passion?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot of things, but if I'm being honest with you, I'm also doing my doctoral studies right now, and so this book, Healing of the Heart, was just a beginning. Looking at how father absence impacts women and girls, and so this book really took a deep dive into not just my own story, but the stories of women that I've served for the past 16, 17 years, really looking at how the father absence with women and girls affects their entire life, literally affects, all levels of and kinds of relationships. And so, healing of the heart, I'm excited about that because that was just the beginning. As I mentioned earlier, my doctoral studies now is like this continuation, then doing deeper research, right? To make the connection, to help others see that, hey, I'm not crazy. This stuff is actually real. Okay. So putting more research to the story or this work that I've started with healing of the heart. And integrating that into the work that I do in terms of psychotherapy, in terms of education, in terms of and everything that I do. I'm super excited about this research that I'm doing. I'm in the middle of designing my research right now, not to bore my listeners, but if you're a researcher, you understand the excitement in my voice. And so I'm moving forward with that. So I'm excited about the information that I'm learning, the practice, knowledge, and content that I have over the past 16 years from the work that I've done, and actually putting it in, integrating with the research that I'm doing, and actually seeing results with that. I'm totally excited about that. And I know that women and girls are going to continue to benefit from the work I'm doing and from the work to come. So that's what I'm really excited about.
And I can tell you're excited. And let's get to that in a few minutes because I do want to know about what that entails, like structuring your research. Like you hear about academics, they'll do something like they'll draw a circle and it's like all the knowledge in the world. And it's like you do all these years, decades of learning and research and writing, and just to like make the tiniest little bump in that world to leave your mark. And so, as far as your situation, it sounds to me like you turned a bad into a good, right? You dealt with the kind of the father absence, and you said, well, I have my own trauma, and I'll understand it, and I'll help others. And so, tell me about what that was like for you. What did you go through as far as the father absence?
Well, absolutely. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from Montego Bay, Jamaica. I grew up in this country. I came here and I was 12 years old. I'm not sure if you're aware, but some of the listeners may understand that coming from a Caribbean culture is very patriarchal, right? Very patriarchal, and that shows up not just like in society at large, but also in your household that is very matriarchal, but they're also, because patriarchy has just been so ingrained, they take on a lot of this identity too. So these ways of being really shows up, and this compounds when you have father absence. Okay, there's a loss. it's like internally, you know that there's something missing. You just can't put your finger on it. And father absence really shaped what we call a unique opening. It shaped everything that happens after you realize that there's a profound loss. When I talk about a unique opening, I'm talking about your adolescent years where you're coming into yourself and you recognize that there's certain differences about you and your peers. So this profound loss really showed up for me, I have to tell you, when I was becoming an adolescent. And when between 10, 11, 12, early adolescent years, when I saw my peers with their father figure, because their fathers weren't around either, they had uncles or some other family member, that male figure that really, supported them. I didn't have such. And so you start to question your identity. Like, what's so different about them? What's different about them? What's different about me? Why is it he's not here, but these people are there for them? You start to question your existence. Like, is there something wrong with me? And so as I developed, as I matured, I really started thinking that there was something wrong with me, and it really affected my self-esteem. It affected my academic progress, or achievement, I should say. It affected how I made friends with my girlfriend peers. You know, it affected how I took on tasks, like just basically how your basic inner core belief, can I believe in myself to do anything? It affected how I approach my intimate relationships, right? It affected my parent-child relationships. So you can see that across domains, this is a really this profound loss. There's a writer, Boss. Boss says that, sometimes a loss can be so profound it cannot be quantified. This is true when there's father absence. And so this is overall how father absence has really impacted me, which led me to the work that I'm doing for the past 18 years, which led me to the book that I've written, Healing of the Heart. And so this is how I would answer that. And that's the truth. Yeah.
And what sort of tools and techniques did you come across? Because like many times when we're trying to fix up our life or like overcome things, sometimes there are false starts, right? Sometimes there are things that don't work, or then we work through it and we finally get to some sort of answer. So like, what did you figure it out? What helped you become better?
That's a very, very deep question. The first thing, though, is to have awareness. And we all have it, it's just that, we cover it up, or somehow we just don't get to it. But the moment that you have awareness that something is happening, that something is off, identify that. That's the first thing, is identification, because the key to change is awareness. So you have awareness, bring awareness to that. Okay. So what helped me? Here's the thing that I tell my students too. If you want to be an expert, if you want to be a wholesome clinician, you have to do the work in your own life. So once you have awareness, what I did, I went to therapy. Okay. So once you have awareness, the idea then is to seek out a competent professional that can help you to work on this thing that you've identified. Because we all call father absence different things. I want to tell you, since I've been in this field, people call it depression, anxiety, people call it a lot of different things. But but here's the thing. Father absence shows up in different ways, different, maladies for people. But again, the awareness is the key. Once you have this awareness, seek out a competent professional, and I would say also culturally competent and aware professionals to help you with that. And that's where it starts. And that's how I started, and that's how I received the help, the encouragement. I want to tell you too, I didn't start out wanting to be a psychotherapist. I went to law school for 1 year and I became a dropout. Okay. Did father absence were attributes or contribute to me dropping out? Absolutely. Okay. Do I regret not finishing law school? No, this is definitely my calling. But I can tell you that when I was in law school, I had the imposter syndrome. I felt like my self-esteem was to the bottom. I constantly compared myself to others. I felt intimidated by male professors. I mean, these things are real, not just perceived, but they're actually real threats that we feel to ourselves, especially when you have this kind of loss in your life and you're really not sure about your identity. So, but I hope I answered your
Oh
question
yeah.
about the identity piece and the awareness, and seeking out competent, culturally competent persons that can really help you to work through this formation of identity that's embedded and really needs to be reconfigured. I tell women all the time, listen, we're going to reauthor your story. We're going to reauthor your identity. This is how it begins. It's painful. It really is, because you really actually do take a scalpel, psychotherapy scalpel, and tools and techniques, and actually ship this thing away and redo it. So I'm excited to do it every day. Pardon. I
Yeah,
love
that's
doing
how
this every day.
that's how excited you got, so excited that even the phone flipped around.
I know.
So
I'm so sorry.
that's all right. So, like, so you're saying that what we need to be doing is have some kind of self awareness about our problem, and then go and talk to a professional and figure out and get some help. And I find that so helpful, and it makes me think. I wish when I started seeing a therapist and going to one and talking to one, I wish I did it years prior, because it's so helpful just to explain your situation. And it's like you tell yourself all these stories, right? You get stuck in the same sentences and phrases, and it's so repetitive, and you don't even realize how repetitive it is because you're stuck in your own head. You tell someone else and they say, hey, that right there, that's imposter syndrome, that's self-sabotage, that's negative self-talk, that's catastrophizing. And it's like, okay, now that I've put a label on it, now it's less scary, and then now I can begin working on it, or at least like stopping myself if it's not serving me, or redirect. And so, as far as when someone comes to you, what kind of person gets your help, and what kind of change do you provide?
I love that question. What person gets my help? I have to say that the person gets to choose me. Okay. What person gets my help? That person gets to choose me. And why do I say that? Because when I enter consultation with any person, what I basically try to do, I metaphorically say, hey, do you have kids? And they'll say no. Or they'll say yes in either way. But I said, have you ever heard of meet or greet? They're so, yeah. Meet and greet is like we're just getting to know each other. Basically, I really try to, what we call in our world, self of the therapist. I try to create a space where I am being myself. I'm allowing this person to learn some aspects of my background that they may be able to relate to. And then if they're not able to relate to those background or those parts of myself, then I allow the conversation to take place about, hey, how do you feel about that? How do you relate to that? And from there, that person gets to choose me or not. And I let them know, hey, if my hair looks funny to you, if you don't like my perfume, which and oftentimes they chuckle at by that time, I said, hey, then I'm not the person for you. So what am I speaking to? I'm directly speaking about, goodness of fit. Is this person, am I a good fit for you? So the persons who are a good fit for me based on their choosing, those are the persons that get my help. And I'm very, very serious about that. Okay. So I am
Okay.
in this for persons to bring about the change that they seek or their desire, and that's my philosophy. I let them choose me. It's not the person that I choose.
Okay, so if someone is looking to bring about some kind of change, then they can talk to you. And I find myself, I've thought about what you're just saying for many years. Like, sometimes you meet some therapists and you're not really sure if they're right for you, and you give them a chance, and you think like, well, am I just like sticking with it just because I need to see someone? And someone a bunch of years ago said, hey,
Oh no,
if your therapist or counselor is wearing, are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, thank you.
All right, all right. Yeah, like someone told me, like, if your therapist is wearing a green sweater and you don't like someone who wears a green sweater, then like it's a free country. Just try something else if that's really the reason. And so, as far as like the specific problems that people come to you with, is there like a recurring theme? Do people say like, I'm dealing with my father absence, my childhood issues, stress at work? Like, what are the usual problems that people are having these days?
Absolutely. I keep having, serial relationships. I can't stay in a relationship, you know. I'm having difficulty getting along with people at work, you know. My boss always seems to get under my skin. Well, it's a female boss or a male boss, right? And when we peel the layer back, it comes right down to identity formation. It comes right down to that attachment style to the parent, any parent that was present or absent. Okay. It always comes back down because unconsciously we call these implicit ways of being. Implicit ways of being means that unconsciously you learn these responses based on objectively what was placed upon you. So if something's objectively placed upon you by adults or anyone else in your life, you're going to react to that because you're human. So unconsciously, you're not aware, but you're responding in a certain way, and over time, this response become ingrained, right? We call that, the synaptics. They get used to it. It's like a warning, and you
Shit.
respond to that. When you become adult, guess what? You're doing the same type of responses, right? So I hear things like, I can't get on with my boss, or you know, I'm ready to leave this job. Or, you know what? I get anxious around this relative. Or I'm just depressed. I just can't feel myself. I'm burned out, overworking. Why are you overworking? Because a lot of times persons with father absence, or mother absence, there's this need to please, there's this people pleasing kind of personality that shows up, and this overworking, or maybe there's being an underachiever. I mean, it goes in either direction, but when you peel that layer back, it has a lot to do with the attachment.
Okay, so people say, I have this issue, and you peel the layer back and you say it comes down to your identity and what was placed upon you in childhood, and then you ended up like just reacting in the same way, and now you're caught in that pattern. And then when someone is on this path to make that change, what's that like? I imagine that there's a lot of like different techniques, or a lot of like revisiting things and changing behaviors and changing perceptions, and it sounds exhausting, overwhelming even to think about. So just what's it like when you go through all the bad stuff, and you're working on issues, and you're kind of back on the uphill climb? I mean, tell us about what happens.
So typically what I've seen, and this is again, I don't like to use that word, but just if I were to give you like a linear picture, and there's no linearity in this work, but if I were to give you one or something close to that, one of the things that a wholesome clinician would do, and that I do, is approach every person from a strengths-based perspective. What does that mean? It means that even though people come to you with these difficulties and supposedly deficits, or what they don't have, they have something though. They still have a lot. All right. They have a lot of strengths. They have a lot of assets, not just liabilities. Okay. So when we're working with anyone, regardless of what we just identified, the idea is to what we call front loading, to build those persons up and the things and the assets that they have. Because if you go in trying to bulldoze and tear everything down, then you have just completely disempowered that person. So typically what I have seen and that I do is that we try to build on the person's strength. While we're building on that person's strength, and by then we're of course the strength is like begins to amplify, and then little by little the persons then can take a look at these negative parts, because to look at yourself and the parts that are not working is very difficult to do. That's why sometimes therapy takes so long, because the harm done to the ego has been embedded for so long. Secondly, to do the work, it's just scary, right? Your ego feels attacked. We have the ego, super ego, and the id. Who wants to go through that? Nobody wants to be torn down. This is why it's important then to work from a strength-based perspective, build that person up. So that's what we do. Build a person up. While you're doing that, then the person begin to see success in something. Then with that success, then you translate that into looking at just this little part that they're comfortable working with. Maybe we can look at your recent history of difficulty, or maybe we can look at remote history, or even remote past history. So there's this historical line that we educate our clients about, that I do, and I help them to look at. So here's the things that have happened, right? But we're going to work on the strengths first, and then we're going to little by little take a look at these parts. So once they get strengthened over time, then you're translating this strength to look at the parts that are difficult, and then you begin to dissect and to chip that away. And what you find that happens, I'm smiling because clients said, oh my god, I'm feeling better, or this happened and I wasn't as reactive, or I'm not even thinking about that anymore. And I'm like, okay, and how did you do that? Why? Because they recognize their assets, and they recognize that they've been able to use it much more. And that's another thing too. When you recognize your client's assets, you help them to utilize that a lot, as much as possible outside of therapy. I always tell my clients, the change you seek does not happen within the confines of the treatment schedule. It really happens outside, right? So we set our clients up to recognize their strengths, and bring awareness to opportunities where in which they can use it outside. And this is how we chip away at I would say, the negative identity, false identity, over identified identities that somehow gets into our psyche as children. That's how I would explain that, and that's what I see, and I love it.
And that's and I can tell that you do. And you think about how I mean there's something to be said about the way that the randomness hits us, right? Like if we if we don't have help, if we don't have a plan, we sort of default to the negativity, right? If you have like bad parents or absent parents, or they're just they weren't the best parents to you, they fall back into the negativity of you. They focus on the problem, and it seems like it is more difficult to focus on the positive, right? It does require some logic and some deliberate thinking. But if we do that, then we can say, hey, focus on your strengths. And then a lot of these things that you think are bad or difficult, they don't even matter that much. And it's a much better plan that you have laid out for us to like build yourself up, think about the strengths, and then work on those minor issues instead of just saying like, hey, let's look at all this negativity. Seems like a good recipe to quit and say, oh, see, this therapy thing, I gave it a shot, but see, I was right all along because look at how terrible it was. It's like, no, it should be good and on a path to positive change. And so I love what you had to say, and I want to make sure that we have time to talk about this amazing, exciting research that just you seem to come alive at the beginning of our conversation, just talking about the organization and the structure. So it might go over my head, but you said that you can relate to some of those academic research nerds in a good way about what you're up to. So tell us about this exciting research you have going on.
Oh my gosh. So how do I begin? So remember earlier I talked about, the work that I've done and that I'm doing, right? So I have lived experiences from former and existing clients about father absence and how it has impacted their identity and their self-esteem. So we call that a phenomenological perspective, like lived experiences, right? So that's one aspect of the research. So my research is going to be what we call a mixed design. So it's quantitative, looking at numbers, right? How many women in this region experience this? How, different regions, right? So we're looking at, of course, the US, of course, the Caribbean. So I will have to be very careful and selective, and of course, who will allow me to do that. So we're looking at different regions and from a quantitative perspective, how many women, right? How many girls, right? Right. So that's the quantitative piece. And then the qualitative piece then is when I interview these women. And remember, I talked about how I already have some of this data because I've interviewed several women already. So using existing data, right, lived experiences, looking at their age, range, different demographics of these women, that's the quantitative piece. The phenomenological piece is looking at their lived experiences, asking them specific close-ended and open-ended questions about father absence that has impacted them and the domains, areas of domains that has affected, their lives. So it's going to be quantitative, qualitative, and putting that information together and making it generalizable then to women across the United States, right? In terms of how father absence really impacts a woman and a girl's life. The other unique piece about this, it's going to be a genetic study. So I will definitely have to get what we call permission from the IRB, which is the Institute of Research, right? Research Institute, in terms of the GWAS. GWAS stands for Genomic Wide Association Study. So looking at gene environment interaction. Why is that important? Because a lot of literature, or most of the literature currently talks about father absence, but it never looks at the scientific realism piece, like the embedded piece, what's underneath father absence that really impacts psychosocial development, physical health. So the genetic piece is going to be an important piece to the quantitative and the phenomenological, the lived experience. We're going to look deeper to see about gene transmission in the environment. What happens to a girl when her father is absent, right? What happens on a genetic level, right? That translates into the environment when this male figure is not there. That impacts psychosocial development. What am I talking about? Emotional, social, cognitive. What happens to that girl? What happens to her physical health, reproductive health when he is not in the home? So that's the piece that I'm talking about, and that's what I'm very excited about.
Very amazing and awesome. So the qualitative and the quantitative and figuring out what happens so that way people can get better understanding with father absence and help others. And so I'm excited for you. And this academic journey that you're on. And the whole reason we're here is to promote your very amazing book, Healing of the Heart Lessons from My Journey, which we said that there's poetry in it, there's talk of the harm done to the constitution of the self, and women and girls can better connect to themselves and other people, affecting change in their relationship, whether it's that parent-child relationship, marriage, or interpersonal relationships, live a more ordered and peaceful life. So tell us about why we should check out this book, Healing of the Heart, and what we'll get from it.
Because the stories in this book is, again, it's not just my stories. It's intertwined with the women and girls that I've worked with. So the reason why it's important to look at this book is because you can relate to something. Every woman that picks up this book, you can connect one way or another. And so that's one reason why you should pick it up. The second reason why you should pick up the book is that it has tools in the back of that book that can help you to bring your awareness to that thing that you can't put your finger really on, or maybe you can. It helps you to bring awareness to that thing, and that it also gives you tools to begin to deal with that thing and guide you forward. So this book is bringing about making connection, helping you to see yourself like, yeah, I can identify it. That's me right there. And then here is what I can do about it. And here's why I want to do something about it. This is healing of the heart.
I like it. So you're saying identify why I think this way, and here's what I should then do, and then here's why it's important that I do that. And that seems like a much more logical approach than just leaving it up to chance and saying, "Oh, I'll figure it out someday. I'll leave it up to willpower." And then there's also this idea that it can be kind of scary to talk to someone, even though people should. But many times there's the need to do some reading first, or even like in between sessions. You mentioned there about how sometimes you go and you do a visit, you work on some stuff, but the real change happens in between visits when you're out there living in the world. So I can see how it can help to have this book to read through and read the prose, the poetry, and hear about your story, hear about the other girls, and then also jump into these exercises. That way we can better understand ourselves. That's what it's all about. And so, what are some next steps here? I know that you're on LinkedIn as Keisha Henry LCSW, and then there's this book, Healing of the Heart, on Amazon. Is that a logical place to go after someone listens to our conversation?
Absolutely. I feel a sense of responsibility there too, because again, when you read this book or listen to this book, I mean, from what I've heard and the reviews, I mean, it is stirring, right? It's going to connect with something inside of you, and it's going to prompt you to really want to do something about it. And so, as I mentioned earlier in our talk about seeking out a competent and professional, culturally competent, professional, I am available, but also go through your insurance company or doctor, your physician. Hey, I need a therapist. Can you give me a referral? Hey, let me speak to my EAP, employee assistance program. I've read this book and it's really stirring my heart and I want to do something about it, or it has brought some things up for me. Absolutely. So that's the ethical responsibility I do feel I have every time I talk about healing of the heart. If I do a podcast, I always start my podcast off with that and I end with it too. There is a responsibility. So if you read the book and you find that there's something happening with you, I definitely encourage you to reach out to these different sources that I mentioned. You can also reach out to me if you would like to follow up with me and get a free consultation. I do it all the time. We have a great team. Stephanie Semino, my team at New Beginning Healing Institute, and also Amanda Costa and also Francesca Sullivan. So we have a great team. You can just reach out to us and we're happy to support you.
And what's the best way to reach out to contact that team? Is there a convenient like website, phone number, email?
So you can reach us to email. It's in the back of the book also. It's k.henry at nbhi-llc.net. Again, that's k.henry at nbhi